The British royal family just made a move that's quietly rewriting centuries of tradition. And honestly, I didn't see this coming. King Charles is systematically removing non-working royals from the inner circle, and the implications are absolutely wild. According to multiple reports from royal insiders, this isn't just some minor restructuring. This is a complete erasure of people who have been part of the royal apparatus for decades. And the question everyone's asking is, who's next on the chopping block? Because here's what's fascinating. This slimmed-down monarchy concept that Charles has been teasing for years is finally happening in real time, and it's brutal. Sources close to the palace claim that if you're not actively contributing to official royal duties, you're essentially being phased out of public life, ceremonial events, and even family gatherings that have traditional significance, which sounds reasonable until you realize who's actually being affected. We're talking about royals who grew up thinking they had a guaranteed position in this institution, people who have built their entire identities around being part of the firm, and now they're watching their relevance disappear overnight. But wait, it gets more complicated. The timing of this restructuring is suspiciously aligned with the ongoing tensions within the family, and I can't help but wonder if this is actually about efficiency or if it's something way more personal. Think about it. When you strip away the formal language and palace statements, what you're left with is a father and grandfather making calculated decisions about who gets to stand on that balcony, who gets security funding, who gets to wear the tiara at state functions. And honestly, that's kind of cold when you think about the human element here. Now, before we go further, let me be clear about something that's driving me crazy and how this story's being covered. Most outlets are framing this as some brilliant modernization strategy. But are we really going to pretend there aren't serious, emotional, and familial consequences to literally deleting people from the royal narrative? Because according to palace insiders who spoke on condition of anonymity, some of these non-working royals are devastated. They're watching their cousins, their siblings, their own family members draw this line in the sand that says your value is directly tied to your productivity for the crown. And that's a pretty dystopian family dynamic if you ask me. Here's where it gets really interesting though, and this is the part that made me stop and reconsider everything. The working royals who remain in the inner circle are now under insane pressure to perform, to justify their existence, to prove their worth the taxpayer funding and the privileges they receive, which means Charles has essentially created a meritocracy within a hereditary system. And I don't know if that's genius or if it's a recipe for disaster. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like in practice, because the devil is in the details. It is alleged that non-working royals are being excluded from key events like Trooping the Color, state banquets, royal weddings where they traditionally have prominent roles, and even Christmas at Sandringham is reportedly becoming more exclusive, which, if true, is absolutely savage. Imagine being told you can't attend your own family's Christmas because you don't have the right job title like. That's next level. And it's creating this bizarre situation where blood relatives are being treated like distant acquaintances, while a handful of working royals get all the access, all the prestige, all the insider information. Sources claim this has led to serious resentment behind closed doors, with non-working royals feeling betrayed by a system they were born into but never asked to be part of. And honestly, I kind of get it. But here's the counterargument that's equally compelling, and you need to hear this because it completely flips the narrative. King Charles is reportedly doing this to protect the monarchy's long-term survival. And when you look at the polling data, when you see how younger generations view the royal family, there's actually a strong case that this is necessary. The British public, according to multiple surveys, is increasingly questioning why they're funding dozens of royals who don't actually do anything. And in an era where every institution is being scrutinized for value and relevance, maybe Charles is reading the room correctly. It is alleged that palace advisors have been warning for years that the bloated royal system was unsustainable, that maintaining the lifestyle, security, and public profile of non-working royals was creating a PR nightmare. And Charles is apparently the first monarch with the guts to actually do something about it. But at what cost? Because here's what nobody's talking about, and this is where my opinion might be controversial. By creating this inner circle versus outer circle dynamic, Charles is fundamentally changing what it means to be royal. He's saying that royal blood alone doesn't guarantee you anything anymore. You have to earn your place. And while that sounds democratic and modern, it also contradicts the entire foundation of monarchy, which is literally based on birthright and hereditary privilege. So which is it? Is this progressive evolution, or is it hypocritical cherry-picking of who gets to benefit from an outdated system? Now let's talk about who's actually being affected, because names matter here and the human stories are what make this real. According to reports, we're seeing royals like Princess Anne's children, Prince Edward's children, and various cousins and extended family members being quietly moved to the periphery. People who have attended royal events their entire lives are suddenly finding themselves uninvited, and sources say the message is clear. If you're not working for the firm, you're not part of the story anymore. But here's the twist that I find absolutely fascinating. Some of these non-working royals are apparently relieved. They're happy to step away from the scrutiny, the expectations, the constant media attention, and they're finally free to live relatively normal lives without the pressure of representing the crown. It is alleged that several younger royals have privately expressed gratitude for being released from what they viewed as a gilded cage. So maybe this isn't the tragedy it's being portrayed as. Maybe it's actually liberation for people who never wanted the job in the first place. But then again, that doesn't explain why others are fighting tooth and nail to maintain their positions. The psychology here is wild when you think about it. You have one group saying, "Please let me out," and another group saying, "You can't take this away from me." And both groups are blood relatives dealing with the same institutional shift, which tells you everything about how subjective value and identity really are. And here's something that's been bugging me since this story broke. Where does this leave the next generation? Because if King Charles is establishing this precedent that only working royals matter, what happens to the children of non-working royals? Are they being raised with the understanding that their royal heritage is basically meaningless unless they sign up for official duties? Sources claim there's genuine confusion among younger family members about their future roles, and palace aides are reportedly scrambling to create clear guidelines about who's in and who's out. But the reality is that Charles is making this up as he goes along, and that unpredictability is causing anxiety throughout the extended family. Let me give you my take on this, and I'm trying to be balanced here, but I genuinely think Charles is onto something even if the execution is messy. The world has changed, the monarchy hasn't, and if the institution is going to survive another generation, it needs to be smaller, more focused, more accountable, and yes, more ruthless about who gets the privileges. But and this is a big but, there's a human cost to this efficiency. There are people who have structured their entire lives around being royal who are now being told they're irrelevant. And I don't think we should dismiss that pain just because we agree with the logic of streamlining. According to palace observers, the real test will be whether this slimmed-down model actually improves public perception of the monarchy, or if it just creates more drama, more division, more headlines about family feuds and hurt feelings. And honestly, based on how the British press operates, I'm betting on the latter. Here's what's really at stake, though, and this is why you should care even if you're not British, and even if you think monarchies are outdated relics. This is a case study in how legacy institutions adapt or die, how families navigate power dynamics when tradition collides with modernity, and how individuals cope when their identity is stripped away by forces beyond their control. The decisions Charles is making right now will define his reign. They'll determine whether the monarchy exists in 50 years, and they'll impact real people with real emotions who happen to have been born into an impossible situation. It is alleged that Charles views this restructuring as his legacy project, the thing history will remember him for. And maybe he's right. Maybe future generations will look back and say, he saved the monarchy by making the hard choices. Or maybe they'll say he destroyed centuries of tradition because he was too focused on optics and efficiency. What's undeniable is that the inner circle is being redefined, the old rules are being rewritten, and the non-working royals are being erased from the narrative whether they like it or not. And honestly, I'm here for the drama because this is going to play out in the most spectacular way over the next few years. The balcony appearances, the state functions, the family photos, everything is going to look different. And every time we see that slimmed-down group of working royals, we'll be reminded of everyone who's missing, everyone who's been deemed unnecessary, everyone who's been cut from the story. And that's going to create its own narrative that Charles might not be able to control.